All right, today we're going to learn how to solve a ratio percent word problem. And again, excuse me, I can't use percent over 100 equals is over of, because in a percent word problem it doesn't say what percent of what is which. Now, if you can read the word problem and figure out what you're looking for, you could put it in that terms. But otherwise, here's the steps I suggest you use. Number one, I suggest you always use a proportion that says percent over 100 equals part over total. And again, when you read the problem, here are the questions you need to ask yourself. What is the percent equal? What is the total equal? What does the part equal? And then a very important question in percent word problems, does the percent and the part stand for the same thing? All right. And again, once you can answer these questions, all right, then you can replace the percent, part, and total in your proportion and solve the proportion. And please note, if the answer to the last question, does the percent and part stand for the same thing, is no, you must adjust the problem by either subtracting the percent from 100 or by subtracting the part from the total. And now if we look at this example here, it says 4% of the students, 40% of the students in class are boys. If there are 20 students in class, how many are boys? So again, if I take this simple word problem and answer these questions, what's my percent is the easiest question. It's 40% because it says 40%. By the way, I recommend that you don't just write down what the percent is, you write down what it stands for. And what does the 40% stand for? Students in class that are boys. So 40 is boys. What's your total? It says there are 20 students in the class altogether. That means 20 students, boys and girls, so that's your total. And again, that's the whole class. That's why it's the total. And the part, well, it says how many are boys. I don't have that part, so my part is X. And again, what am I looking for? What part am I looking for? The part that are boys. And again, does the percent and the part stand for the same thing? Boys, boys. Yes, they do. And again, if the answer to this question is yes, you just plug these numbers into this proportion to solve it. So my percent is 40 goes here, my total is 20 goes down here, and my part is X goes up here. And now I just solve the proportion like I've been doing for the last month. Cross multiply 20 times 40 is 800 equals 100 times X is 100x. Now what I can do is solve the simple one-step equation by dividing by 100. And if you remember what we've been discussing, that leaves you with x. And you don't have to divide by 100, you just have to move the decimal 2 places to the left. Because for every power of 10 you divide by, you move 1 place to the left. And that leaves you with 8 boys. By the way, it's always a good idea, just like with a ratio and proportion word problem, to ask yourself, does this answer make sense? And it does, because isn't 40% a little less than half? 50% is half, 40% is a little less. So a little less than half the class will be boys. Well, if there are 20 students in the class, and if there are 8 boys, isn't 8 a little less than half of 20? Because half of 20 is 10. So the answer makes sense. Now the tricky part about this is if I had the exact same problem, all right, but I changed one word, just one word. If I was to change this word to where it said 40% of the class are girls, all right, so now when I look at it, my percent is still 40%, but this time the 40% stands for girls. My total is still 20 students in class, and again, that's the whole class still. and my part is still X, and I'm still looking for how many are boys. But now I have, does the percent and the part stand for the same thing? My percent is 40%, and it stands for girls. My part is X, and it stands for boys. Girls and boys are not the same thing. So do they stand for the same thing? No. So now look what it said in the note. If the answer to the last question is no, you must adjust the problem by either subtracting the percent from 100 or by subtracting the part from the total. Since I don't even know what the part is, I can't subtract the part from the total. But I do know the percent is 40% girls. So if I subtract the 40 from 100, I get 60. And that 60 is now boys, because if you're not a girl, you're a boy. And again, if 40% are girls, then that means 60% are boys. So now, when I replace the 60 on top of the percent, and I replace the total as 20, and I solve 60 times 20 is actually 1,200 equals 100 times X is 100X. Divide by 100 on both sides, and X comes out to equal 12 because I just moved the decimal 2 places to the left. And does it make sense now that there would be more boys than girls? Yeah, because if they're 40% girls, that means 60% are boys, which is a little more than half of boys, and 12 is a little more than half. By the way, if you don't want to adjust the problem from being no to yes by subtracting the 40 from 100, you could get the same answer by taking your other answer of 8 and subtracting 20 minus 8 is 12. But I recommend very strongly that you change the problem before you start rather than wait until the end. Because I know you, and when I say I know you, I mean I know all of you and all the students I've ever taught. Once you start multiplying and dividing, you stop thinking about what you're doing. So if you change to the percent and part stand for the same thing before you start, you won't forget to change it. And again, if you follow these steps, I think this is the easiest way to solve a percent word problem. And we're going to be spending a lot of time solving percent word problems in the next couple of weeks.